But there is this system of Marxism that is being kind of put into every institution in America. This has been happening for years to the tunes of millions of dollars that is causing more discrimination.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome back to The Narrative. Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, David Mahan. Today, we're taking a deep dive into Trump's executive orders. President Trump has been busy in the first couple of weeks in office, and they've been coming fast and furious. We've gotten a lot of questions about executive orders, and so...
We got a lot of coffee to get through.
You have been sipping daintily
100
before we started
plus
recording.
Actions and orders, and
so get carpal tunnel from all the coffee that he's holding and drinking.
Cups of coffee for every executive order. So let's go.
Wow,
we're
you are officially charged up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's helpful, as always, maybe we take a higher level approach before we get into some of the specifics of the executive orders. Because the executive order is one of those things that you hear on either side. When it's your guy doing it, you love it. When it's the other guy's doing it, it's an abuse of power and the worst thing ever. Yeah. So, Aaron, can you just give us a couple minutes of what is an executive order and why are they worth talking about in the depth and detail that we're going to today?
Yeah, so, and this is in a perfect world, I think, and probably in an ideal system, the way the founders intended. You wouldn't see such broad power in the executive that we see today, right? But the reality is we ended up in this place we're in because over the last really 50 plus years, Congress has really empowered the chief executive, the commander-in-chief, with a lot of authority. And I would say it's because they don't want to have to vote on things that are controversial, right? So they've just sort of turned things over to the executive to let him, to give him wide breadth on doing a lot of things. Now, what executive orders can't do is they obviously can't conflict with the Constitution and they can't conflict with laws already passed. However, we see this all the time. You pass a law, but then there's a lot of questions about how does it actually get implemented, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the whole separation of powers thing that we talk a lot about. Where Congress makes the laws and the executive sort of executes on the laws. So the question is, how do those laws get implemented? And at its core, that's what an executive order is okay, this is what the law says. How does this agency actually go about doing that, right? For example, the clearest example of this would be immigration, and we're going to talk about that here, right? You pass the law to say, hey, it's illegal to come into the country without going through a proper vetting, all that kind of. We have a legal process of coming in. Any other place is illegal, right? Well, ultimately, that's up to law enforcement to decide how to enforce that, right? A police officer can decide if you're speeding. A police officer can decide whether to give you a ticket or not, right? And again, that's an important separation of powers principle. So the Biden administration decided they weren't going to use their police powers to enforce immigration policies, which leads to 12 million people pouring into the country illegally. The Trump administration has come in and said, nope, we are going to enforce the immigration laws. And that's pure sort of executive authority. He has the right to do that. And so that's the bulk of these executive orders. There's a lot of other things that get into, Congress says we're going to spend money on Title X family planning, right? Well, who's going to actually use that money, right? Is it going to be Planned Parenthood or is it going to be pregnancy centers, right? Mm-hmm. So, you get some of that kind of stuff in here as well. And then you have broader questions along the lines of saying, you can't discriminate on the basis of sex. All right, well, the Biden administration, I believe, took an unconstitutional view of the definition of sex, and that's how we got in a lot of this transgender madness. Well, the Trump administration is coming in with a correct scientific view. So those are the ways executive orders work, big picture, and that's what you see him doing here. Really, I think what you see here, obviously, is Trump coming in and taking very aggressive stances on implementing his policies and procedures, and actually, I think, in a very great way, questioning some assumptions that Republicans haven't questioned in the past. But really, all he's practically doing is having his agencies enforce the laws as he sees the best way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good distinction and a helpful distinction, that when the claim is made that it's equivalent of Trump passing all these new laws, that's not actually what's happening here, or on the other side either. It is strictly a dictation or direction on how you are to execute the laws that already exist.
And this is what's important about this, right? You listen to people like Congressman Hakeem Jeffries or people that say, oh, Elon Musk was not elected to do this. What's happening right now is the most democratic thing that could happen, right? Donald Trump ran and said, if I win, we are going to cut government, right? We're going to look at all this wasteful spending. We're going to, and we're going to implement these policies, all that kind of stuff, right? So he's come in, he's empowered Elon through DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, to review spending. And he's saying, okay, we're not going to spend on these things now, right? He ran on that and he's doing it. What the left is essentially attacking Donald Trump right now over is they're saying, no, the unelected bureaucrats should be left alone to decide how they're going to spend the money. That's the oligarchy right there. I mean, that's literally the undemocratic thing, is saying the elected guy who ran on doing this and won shouldn't be allowed to do the thing he's doing. It's the unelected people should be allowed to continue doing what they're doing. That's the insanity of all this.
When is that going to be challenged at the Supreme Court level, right? This fourth, right, this administrative state that we've got going on that everybody talks about every year, but nobody deals with. That's got to hit the Supreme Court soon, right?
Well, so it somewhat did already in the Chevron case, right? I mean, because that was what the Chevron case was, the Chevron deference case, and I can't remember what the case was that overturned this concept of Chevron deference, and we've talked about it here. But the idea is that you defer to the governmental agencies to decide how a policy is implemented, right? That they ultimately are the authority to decide this, not what the law said, right? And I mean, this you've just seen how the left has wreaked havoc with this principle of Chevron deference and stare decisis that leans so much on past precedent. They've just built up this whole just insane structure of case law that allowed the fourth branch that you're talking about, David, to just run rampant. Well, that's already started to pull back, and I actually think this is one of these things. It kind of reminds me. You look at some of the executive orders the left is suing. It's kind of like, guys, be careful what you wish for. They're going to take some of these cases to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's going to say, you know what, actually, it reminds me of the conversation we had. We're having right now about DEI in universities. Nobody ever. Appropriated $13.3 million to go to OSU's DEI department every year, right? But somehow they found it, right? So that wasn't actually right in the first place. That's government ran amok right away. So I think, David, a lot of that is going to be coming. And it's going to be very sweet when it does come. Right?
Well, that's great foundation for our discussion today, I think, of why these are worth talking about and in most cases celebrating what we're seeing. We're going to do one of our top 10, back and forth. Yeah. You guys take turns volleying. I know, I think that the audience has enjoyed listening to some of those episodes.
We'll lose a few from time to time.
Well, beyond that, my dad will come back.
Exactly,
Sure. he won't be too upset. Yeah. But let's start with some honorable mentions. Maybe stuff that we don't want to go into in total deep dive, but things that are worth mentioning that are on.
Did you have any? I don't know. Like I put some. I was having such a hard time trimming them down, David. Did you have any honorable favorite ones that were just needed to call out?
A couple nights ago, I was trying to go to sleep, and I was fading in and out, and I heard this man say he's about to buy Gaza.
Yeah,
that was a boss move if I ever heard of one.
Yeah, buying Gaza, and then I saw my favorite was the Nancy Pelosi meme of her on the phone where she said, "Sell Greenland, buy Gaza," because she's always playing insider trading game. No, that one, and actually buying Greenland. Let's do all of it, right? Just real quick, my favorite ones. One, and you could tell they were just having fun with some of these. The people over fish one from
I can see that one working.
Yeah, exactly. That's over California saying, hey, we actually need water and we shouldn't be prioritizing fish over having water to put out fires. I don't have my tinfoil hat with me, but I keep it handy when I need it. the release of the JFK assassination files.
I like that.
That's going to be one. That's going to be a late night scrolling through documents for me when those come out.
I will happily accept your summary of that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's
I want to see what they did to Malcolm.
That's exactly.
and Martin. I want to know.
It's all coming out exactly.
Yeah.
What else? The fun one. We might have to do a whole podcast on this at some point. All the stuff happening right now on USAID. Politico getting $8.1 million in Politico Pro subscription revenue. There's things like that. And the timing of it is just all so coincidental of when all this, it's right around either the the 2020 election, and yeah.
Oh, and how about Christianity Today?
CT got
showing up in there.
1.9 million.
Almost like Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale, that we talked with her about, was spot on the entire time.
Now, if we can suggest, right, because we got, it's always about the first 100 days. If we can suggest one, I stumbled upon a good one. I was in Florida, a guy from Canada was sitting at my table, and I said, hey, how you feel about, you all being our 51st state? And, I'm just joking around. We clowning. He just sat down, and he was not happy. Right? This man was really not happy. And he said, well, how do you feel about California being just another province? And I was like, now you might be on to something.
I would do that all day.
Listen, JD, if you're hearing us,
just seriously, we will trade them California.
Take them.
Exactly. Good golly.
I think we could make a deal where you just kind of take the coasts and go up to the Arctic and make that Canada, and we'll take that nice conservative middle part of Canada and bring it down to the Midwest.
Everything north of Virginia, we trade off. I don't think I'd be too opposed to that. And then the other ones, the return to work in person is that's going to do more to cut government than probably anything else, right?
DeWine kind of followed suit.
And DeWine just followed suit, too.
I don't know if you caught it, but he said we saved millions of dollars by letting these jokers stay home, right? Because of rent that's not being paid. So now that they're coming back, the question is, like, what do we spend millions in buying buildings, or what are we doing?
Well, so that's the thing. The state still owns all the buildings, but to me, it's like, we saved millions of dollars on not having to turn the lights on and run the heat as much and things like that. But how much money did we lose of how little work was actually being done at home? Right, pure production. Right, and the reality is, maybe it's a sign that we don't need as many people there. Right, and this is a whole broader conversation that's going to be playing out in this governor's race coming up. And my last honorable mention is just backing out of the WHO. All of these massive international organizations that we just throw millions of dollars at, it's hard to see many of them actually serving our national interests. So, those are just my honorable mentions. There's too many more to go through, but yeah.
Well, that's quite the list already, and we've still got 10 more to go.
We haven't actually got into our favorites yet. Yeah.
All right. So we got to go. We got to keep this.
Sorry, I'll let David get us going off the top.
All right, David. So number one for you.
You got to love his tariff game, right? His taxing, goods and services from foreign entities, and for the reason why these are some of my favorites, right? So you got the northern border, you got the southern border, all the drugs that are coming in, the fentanyl. That's coming in. That is the reason for the tariffs. And I think it's important that we remember that, right? It's not just him, trying to just stack up more money from other countries, potentially causing a trade war. They are killing folks in our country. I was reading some of the order, and it was talking about just across our northern border, right? Dealing with Canada, we've got 9.5 million Americans at risk of being killed by fentanyl based on what they have seized. And that's nothing close to the amount of drugs that have been seized on the southern border. And so these are absolutely necessary. And I really, I just can't stand the media. But they were like, what are we going to do with these avocados? We ain't going to be able to have, we ain't going to be able to Super Bowl.
Chipotle is already charging extra for guac.
Right.
What happens
Unbelievable.
now?
You ain't going to be able to buy your beer, stuff like that. And so within
Canadian
hours.
beer is terrible, just as an aside.
Within hours, these guys are like, no, we're not. We're going to raise, tariffs on
Corona's
blah, blah.
really good. Mexican beer is good, but keep going.
Alcoholics. I'm tired of these alcoholics, man.
I'm refraining from comment.
Yeah, you Baptists can drink.
Southern Baptist here. And, anyway, keep going. Sorry.
No, but I love it. When he says, "Hey, we're gonna drop tariffs, 10%, 25%, this, that, and the third," and then all of a sudden, the media goes crazy, and then within the same day, all right, we'll take the tariffs. All right,
we'll back off.
Yep, we'll put 10,000 troops on the southern border. Okay, cool. We'll.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a negotiating tactic, and I don't think that was ever really fully understood by the media with the way they reported on it. It was like the trade war was a foregone conclusion. Justin Trudeau comes out, announces counter tariffs, and oh no, and 48 hours the issue's resolved, and Trump gets what was in the United States' best interest.
Sometimes literally by the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, so it's funny. I promise you guys, David and I did not compare notes before going into this. We came in not knowing what the other one was going to say. Trust
me, I never talked to this man.
Exactly. This is the only time we actually see each other. We stay away from each other for the no. This was my first one as well. The northern border and southern. The two are imposing duties to address the flow of illicit drugs over our northern and southern border. And so, a couple things on this. One, David talked about some of the actual stats on it. I mean, I thought this was, some of these numbers are crazy. In addition, the Mexican drug trafficking organizations have an intolerable alliance with the government of Mexico. The government of Mexico has afforded safe havens for the cartels to engage in the manufacturing and transportation of dangerous narcotics, which collectively have led to the overdoses of hundreds of thousands of American victims. There's also a growing presence of Mexican cartels operating fentanyl and nitazene synthesis labs in Canada. I mean, it's unbelievable what you actually see happening there, and a few different things on the on just this whole tariff conversation. Number one, I think what Donald Trump has just really asserted is we are so much bigger than all of these other people, right? And we just play this weak game with them. In the one executive order, it talks about how while trade accounts for 67% of Canada's GDP, 73% of Mexico's GDP, it only accounts for 24% of the U.S. GDP.
He said America is the pot of gold.
That's exactly it.
Why are we letting them control, what we're doing? And in many cases, we're paying more for products than other nations are paying.
No, I mean, that's exactly, like, we have just been getting outflanked on all of these for no reason, right? And here's my big thing about this, right? There's two things that really need to drive home. One's sort of a big picture sort of negotiation thing, and then the other is the actual community aspect of this. The George Bush, sort of Paul Ryan, even throw Mitt Romney kind of type of free market conservatives in the country. They have been sort of driving a lot of our conversation around tariffs for generations. And they fundamentally are opposed to tariffs. They think tariffs are wrong. In no case should you ever use tariffs. It hurts, it drives inflation, all that kind of stuff. That sounds nice in a nice isolated bubble, right? But when you're actually coming to the negotiation table, if you're coming to the table with another country and you're saying, hey, just so you know, off the top, we don't believe in tariffs, so we will never use tariffs against you. What? Like, literally, that's the equivalent of Andy Reid showing up at the Super Bowl this weekend and saying, listen, we will not throw the ball, right? No matter what, just so you know, we're coming into this game. Eagles, you should know we're only going to run.
Yeah.
And you guys can respond to that however you want. But we're taking it off the table to ever pass the ball. What are the Eagles going to do, right? They're going to load up and just throw everyone at the line, and they're never going to go anywhere, right? The Chiefs are never going to move the ball at all. Just the fact that for so long America has taken tariffs off the table. Now, again, at some point, I'm sure, and Donald Trump, this isn't just a bluff from him. I'm sure we're going to actually have to ride some of these tariffs out.
Right.
And it might cause some short-term pain, but I don't think we have a context for how bad these trade deals have been for us for so long and what it's done to us.
Yeah. David, what's your next one?
All right, just kind of riding on those hills. To designate cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations, and especially designated. And this one is so important. Republicans and Democrats for the last several years seem to agree that we have a proxy war going on. We've been hearing about proxy wars over in Israel, with Hamas and Hezbollah. They are nothing without Iran, right? They have no money without Iran. They have no weapons without Iran. And a lot of these cartels that are coming in through our borders, right? And again, we're not just talking about Venezuelans. We're not just talking about Mexicans. Just about every nationality across the planet we're seeing come through those.
190 countries.
China,
Laura Reese said on the pod. Yeah.
And so what is going on? These are proxies that are doing the bidding of some foreign entity, and within this, they're talking about they have extra territorial command and control structures. Yep. I love the fact that we are looking at them not as just one gang member, like a handful of random gang members that are taking over apartment buildings in Colorado somewhere, right, Aurora or whatever. We're talking about folks that have command and control structures internationally, right? And so when you designate them as foreign terrorists, then that gives our country a little bit more power and freedom to track these guys down, break down these control structures, not just in America, but wherever they're stemming from.
Yeah. No, that and David, I think this what ties the first one, the tariffs conversation and this together, is, this is not just a board game of Risk, right, where we're moving pawns around the table. Like, this is real life consequences for these types of policies, right? I think that the number was 75,000 deaths from fentanyl a year ago, something like that. And when you allow this much illicit activity to be flowing into your country, so many people coming into your country unregulated, and it really just makes sense that, of course, our sort of national adversaries are going to be doing that. And if the Mexican army or the Venezuelan army or the Chinese army were to come across the border and kill 75,000 Americans, we'd be dropping bombs all over the world, right? But because, honestly, it's poor folks, it's drug addicts that we think are they probably had it coming, because it's people that we just don't like to see. We're okay with we are tacitly okay as a country with that loss of life, and I know that sounds harsh, but there's no other explanation for why we've tolerated this level of criminal activity coming over our border.
And to that point, Aaron, I know we joke about Trump saying, "Hey, we're going to actually loaded up a plane of these guys." What was it, Venezuela?
Colombia.
Colombia, and they wouldn't let them drop them off, so they had to turn that plane around. Again, by the end of the day, hey, dude sent his own plane, right? Like, right. Like, exactly. I come get him my daggone self.
Yeah.
And we applaud that, but these guys are dangerous. Some of these guys we don't want, just being dropped back off at home and then coming back through the Darien Gap, right back across the border. And so what this designation does is allow them to go to Gitmo.
Yep.
Right. And so they're not in our soil. Yep. But we can control the worst of the worst, what happens to them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good designation as well.
And again, my whole thing about this is, I did an interview earlier this week with the Canton repository. Yeah. And it was funny. They reached out. I mean, they reached out to you, right, Mike?
Yes.
And they said, Trump has done all of these executive orders on immigration. We're looking for a Christian organization. We'll talk about how bad they are. And so we replied back and said, yeah, we're happy to talk about it, but we think they're pretty great. And this is one of these things where, I actually had a pretty good conversation with the reporter, but she instantly goes to, doesn't the Bible say we need to care for the stranger?
Welcome the sojourner.
All that kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely it does. But let's just look at the book of James, right? It talks about you need to care for the orphan, the widow, and the stranger. So do we need to, again, I don't want to get into, there's a broader sort of theological debate about who is the stranger, all that kind of stuff. Let's just take for a moment the assumption that even people from a foreign land, if we can care for them, we can. Well, first and foremost, that is a call to the individual. But even let's say as a nation, can we be mindful of the plight of the world? I think there's a good argument as a nation we should be merciful where we can. The problem is the way that the Biden administration did this it made it much more difficult for us to care for the orphan and the widow, right? We had so much unmitigated illegal immigration into this country. We couldn't care for our own orphans and widows.
Yeah. Our own safety net.
Our own safety
is being
net, right?
Overworked.
And I mean, and again, I said to her too, like, go back, ask why are all these people trying to come into our country illegally, right? Setting aside the very nefarious ones, I think David did a good job of highlighting that. Yeah, there's some people that really want to do some ill to our country. All these people want to come to our country because their country doesn't have law and order, right? And so what we are doing is, by allowing them to come in this way, we are undermining the very reason that people want to be here. So let's have immigration, let's have refugee policies, but let's do so in a measured way so we can care both for them and continue to care for our orphans and widows.
So when we let Mike sleep on in the apartment, is that stranger orphan?
Yeah, that's something around more
or less like
exactly.
that. And there's the nuance of the immigration debate is, I think, where we see the media really trying to stir things up is they would take this cartel designation and say, well, that's just xenophobic and you're applying this to all immigrants. No, we're not. Like, we can say that there are legitimately good people who are seeking to get into our country that would be fine and valuable as citizens. Yes. But we also need to acknowledge there are some very bad groups and people who are taking advantage of the policies as they are. And tightening those up does not necessarily reflect how we feel about all immigrants.
No, that's the J.D. Vance interview. What did he say? That's not right, Margaret.
I don't care, Margaret.
I don't care, Margaret. Yeah. We need to just get that as a clip that we could just play on the podcast. I don't care, Margaret, from time to time. But you know, she threw, again, all of the tropes, all of the cliches that used to make conservatives run for the hills, and now we just say, I don't care, Margaret.
Are you saying that all these people are criminals?
Exactly, yeah, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. They came into
illegally.
that makes them criminals. The other thing was, she said, oh, isn't America a nation of immigrants? Yes. But that doesn't mean 240 years later we have to have the dumbest immigration policies. Like, they set up these straw men of like sort of a binary argument that's just not reality. And thankfully we stopped playing those games.
Yeah. Is it your turn now?
I think it's mine.
Okay,
David keeps on cutting in line and stealing my thunder. So my next one is the expanding educational freedom and opportunities for families.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, this one. Now, the thing about this one is it's one of the more vague ones, right? Because it really is it does, I think, two really big things. So the first thing it does, within 60 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Education shall issue guidance regarding how states can use federal formula funds to support K-12 educational choice initiatives. So this is basically ordering the Department of Education, I think it's hopefully in part how to tear itself down and send the money to the states so parents can use these resources to choose a school for themselves. But it's not real clear yet of what it's going to mean, but it is a strong, not just a signal, it is a commitment from the Trump administration to figure out how to empower choice within the states. And then the second thing it says is within 90 days of the order, the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Education shall review their respective discretionary grant programs and each submit a plan to the president on how to expand education freedom for America's families and teachers. So again, it's not real clear yet what this is going to mean, but this is the beginning of something huge happening. And it cannot come soon enough, especially in light of the latest. You guys have heard us talk about the National Assessment on Education Progress scores before. They come out about every 3 years.
Can we even call it progress if we
I know,
keep
it's
moving
regression.
backwards?
Yeah, we're going to call it the NAER scores, right? Not the NAEP scores, the NAER, because it's regression, not progress. And again, 4th and 8th grade reading scores declined again between 2019 and 2024. 4th grade reading is down in every state except Louisiana and Alabama. Don't feel good about yourselves, Louisiana and Alabama. It's just they're so bad there, they can't get worse. Sorry, that real talk.
Got cousins.
That can't read. Sorry. Let's see. On math, 4th graders ticked up 2 points since 2022, but that doesn't get them back to where they were in 2019. And 8th grade math scores dropped in every state but Tennessee between 2019 and 2024. And those 2019 scores already reflected a half-decade-long drop. I mean, this is just, we have a crisis, and it's what I said in the National Review article. The education establishment, the teacher unions have no answer for this, right? It's just keep throwing money at the same problem. And we have to rebuild the system from the ground up. And this is, again, the most serious we've ever seen an administration get to do this. And just not, I think the biggest thing, and I said this about like we'll talk about this on some of the trans stuff, I'm sure, but we're just not afraid of the left anymore. And we're just saying, yeah, we're going to fix this because it's too bad not to address.
Yeah, I would hope, because these are executive orders and they don't really bear the weight of legislation, right? Like if, Biden had his executive orders, a lot of what Trump is doing now is breaking some of that down that he did. But I think, even if you disagree with Trump, I think there's got to be some sense of, man, this guy is doing what he said he would do. And I can appreciate that about a politician. Two, I'm hoping that the population would say, even though I don't really agree with what he just did with this school choice thing, there's got to be a reason why he did it, right? There's got to be a reason why he won the popular vote. There's millions of people that wanted him to make this move. Why? And to be honest, family, 80-some%, almost 90% of African-American families are pro-school choice. Those that represent you in the State House are not, even though we are. And that's a whole other issue I may get into here in a minute. But we need to be asking questions. And when you're looking for the answers, you might have to look in places you don't normally look.
David, I think that, having been around Republican circles for a long time, conservative circles for a long time, at every meeting, every time there's a confab in Washington or Dallas or wherever they want to go, sooner or later, somebody says, well, what about the black vote, right? And their answer is, just real talk, it's typically, how do we get black folk to vote on our stuff, to do the things we want? Instead of saying, how do we meet the needs in these communities to convince them that actually this is the better course forward. And this is the reason why it's hopefully conservatives are learning this. There's a reason why, despite all of the attacks from the media and the left, Trump has done better in the black community than any conservative before. It's because this is, to David's point, this is actually a thing. Like, you're not seeing what's going on in Columbus public schools, right? I'd want out of those things too. But getting out of them takes more than just open enrollment. You got to start new schools in those areas, and you got to have choice to do that, and you got to have innovation to do that.
And we got to stop messaging these awesome things by saying, okay, we want you to do what we want.
Right.
No, sell them what they want.
Exactly.
Like, what mother doesn't want a great education for their kid? What mother, wants their kid, getting straight A's, knowing that when they go to college, right, affirmative action, they get a full ride scholarship, they're not going to be able to finish the end of their first year because they're not there. That A was really a C or a D, right? So we got to sell these families on what they want, not say, hey, why don't you come over to our side and all of we own righteousness somehow.
No, that's right. And the last thing I'll just say on this point with the NAEP scores is, hopefully this is what bringing choice into the environment will do. One, for us, it's going to help us get more kids into Christian education, right? And get as many kids as possible to hear the gospel and know the truth. But two, it's going to, and this is something Vivek Ramaswamy has been really good on lately, it's going to restore the meritocracy, right? That is so, he just did an interview that was, again, the more we can start questioning premises out there, the faster we're going to be able to rebuild the direction of the country. And why is it that teachers, there's not merit pay for teachers, right? If you are excelling as a teacher, you should be able to make more money, right? If you're excelling as a salesman, if you're excelling in almost every other job, you can make more money. But we don't do that in education, and we basically say no matter what you do, everyone's getting more money. Well, no wonder why it's not gotten any better, and it progresses. We've thrown more money at it than ever, and it gets no better.
Yeah, just stay in the system long enough, and you'll make more money.
Exactly.
That's basically the promise.
Exist, right? So put your head down and
just keep paying your union dues.
Exactly.
All right. David, you're up. What's your next executive
Defending
order?
women from gender ideology extremism. Right?
I knew you were going to take that one.
And restoring biological truth to the federal government. I like that second piece, right? And I think whoever wrote this for the Don did a great job. And I know it wasn't him because he's still talking about there's only two genders and it's sexes.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, okay. Listen to this. Invalidating the true and biological category of women improperly transforms laws and policies designated to protect sex-based opportunities into laws and policies that undermine them, replacing long-standing cherished legal rights and values with identity-based, inchoate social concepts. And then they break down gender ideology, right, which is good for us. Replaces the biological category of sex with an ever-shifting concept of self-assessed gender identity, permitting the false claim that males can identify and thus become women and vice versa, and requiring all institutions of society to regard this false claim as true. It's not just, why don't you just leave people alone? Why don't you just leave these kids alone? This is infecting every institution in America, every last one. And it's privacy rights, it's safety rights. And so we've been making these moves. Ohio was one of the first to go down this path. Took us a while to get there,
right?
But we've got 20-some states that have moved in that direction, and I'm so thankful that at our highest. Did you see him with all those kids?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was awesome. Like just like some New York grandfather.
No, literally, it was like a grandpa. That was the thing. And even just the way he was joking with the kids. Again, like there's a lot of times that Donald Trump says things that a lot of us go, ooh. But he's got a charm to him, especially in those environments.
And he was, he honored those young girls and women. Riley Gaines was back there. I texted her last night. Click was there. Representative Click. Championed this with us here. He was there. Great to see them honored, right?
Yep.
But I think this is kind of we're on the other side of a tipping point, with this gender thing, and I'm just happy to see it.
Yeah, I posted on X. I'm going to start calling it X, not Twitter now, out of deference to Elon, out of respect for Elon. I posted on X, the picture, the how it started, how it's going, right? The picture of Riley on the podium with William Thomas to the picture of Donald Trump, the President of the United States, reaching back and shaking Riley's hand at the executive order signing. And it is the perfect example of here's just some 22-year-old girl, right? 21-year-old girl when all this happened, who just decided to say, enough's enough, I'm going to use my voice. And just a few years later, she's standing in the White House while the president signs an executive order to make sure this never happens again. Yeah. Like, it's just that is a God story.
It's validating.
It is. Mm-hmm. It's a God story if you've ever seen one. And it is, it just shows like you don't have to, just because something is this way right now doesn't mean it's going to be that way forever.
I just seeing all of them behind Trump, and again, I'm not blowing this man up. Again, I'm giving him his props because he's doing what he said he would do when so many fake politicians don't.
Right.
They win their elections and then they excuse why they do nothing on the other side of the aisle.
Yep.
And I'm looking at Riley Gaines. I'm thinking of folks like Chloe Cole. And just a few months ago, those that are on their same side of the aisle, the Republicans, were afraid to speak up for them.
Yep.
And they're standing in front of the most powerful man of the United States, of the world, in the United States of the government of America, and breaking down and standing up for them. Listen to this. This says, each agency and all federal employees shall enforce laws governing sex-based rights. This is critical. Protections, opportunities, and accommodations to protect men and women as biologically distinct sexes. Each agency should therefore give the term sex, male, female, men, women, boys, and girls the meaning set forth in this order when interpreting or applying statutes, regulations, guidance, and all other official agency business. Yep. This is critical.
And again, that's right there.
Title IX
what
funding.
David just described is the power of an executive order, right? Because that this is not a new law, but this is looking at what the law says. It's what's so dangerous. What the left does is the left just reinterprets words to mean whatever they want, right?
Yep.
You know, and the bottom line is Trump is actually interpreting the words as they were intended, right? Title IX means nothing if you can just decide what sex you are in any given moment.
They flipped it.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Aaron, you get the next
So
one.
this is a quick one, and because we talked a little bit about it last week, but just we got to call out the pro-life stuff Trump has done here, right? Reinstating the Hyde Amendment, reinstating the Mexico City policy. I mean, the hundreds of millions of dollars spent overseas on abortion, right, and abortion ideology. It's the most sort of like imperial colonization effort of the United States over the last 2 decades is the way we have gone into all of these countries and said, you're not getting anything from us if you're not pushing abortion. Right? I think I saw the one number showed over $105 million spent last year in on promoting abortion in Africa. Right? Like we are literally trying to take our the left's Marxist ideology and force it on third world countries.
But they're liberating and empowering women in those countries.
Right?
What are you talking about?
It's the way they go about this, and again, there was so much gnashing of teeth by pro-lifers going up to this election, and not all pro-lifers, right? Just a handful of what I would call cake eater pro-lifers that just want to thump their chest and look nonpartisan and say, well, I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris because I can't trust Donald Trump to do pro-life things. Again, this was the man that appointed the justices that overturned Roe v. Wade. I think we should give him the benefit of the doubt. He picked as his vice president arguably the most pro-life U.S. senator, unless Josh Hawley wants to have a debate with him as his VP. We should not be surprised that these policies are back. And I think the other thing about it too, though, that Donald Trump has done is he's actually built a new coalition for pro-lifers to work with, right? And there was always sort of this the broad sort of Reagan three-legged stool of a coalition of like social conservatives and fiscal conservatives, and then foreign policy conservatives was his, but especially social conservatives and fiscal conservatives. But the coalition was always based on we kind of like the same people, not that we have shared interests, right? And that's where you've seen the fiscal conservatives kind of run off at times. Well, this coalition actually has shared interests. It's the sort of pro-life social conservatives, Christian conservatives, and the right that just wants to stop funding the left, right? The Elon Musks, they're not pro-life, but they're just like, we need to stop funding woke ideology. And they've recognized, hey, even if you're cool with abortion or you want abortion, Planned Parenthood is a far leftist organization that has a crazy political agenda that's destroying America. Let's not fund them, right?
And destroying black people.
All of these things, right? So they might not think that abortion is actually... Elon Musk I don't think he's pro-life, right? RFK is certainly not pro-life, but they recognize, let's stop funding the people that are politically destroying the country. That's an actual coalition, right? We're coming to the same conclusion just for different reasons. And that's long-term, I think that's going to be the coalition we need to drive the life issue forward in many ways.
All right, David. Next one.
All right, DEI. Right?
Yeah, I got that one too. Okay, that's my last one.
I kind of avoid talking about DEI publicly because I don't like giving my amen to the messaging, the way some of us message DEI. But it says ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. First of all, family, the Supreme Court already ruled that fighting discrimination with more discrimination is not constitutional. We can't do it. It doesn't make sense. It's not righteous. to do it that way. Does that say that their racism is gone and we don't need, different ways of combating it? No, that doesn't say that, right? As long as Mike is in the world, there's going to be racism, right? As long as there's sinful man on this planet, right? I don't know at any point in the world that even those of us that walk according to his word, we are still sinful, right, in nature, especially Aaron. and so as long as you are here, listener, there's going to be sin in the world.
David's going to fall down from a log in his eye right now. But keep going. You're rolling.
But the thing I love about this is it's starting a conversation around, diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Is it a good thing to include folks that we don't, everybody looks like me, right? Should I include folks that don't look like me, into certain conversations? Is that a benefit to the whole group? Yes, absolutely. But there is this system of Marxism that is being kind of put into every institution in America. This has been happening for years to the tunes of millions of dollars that is causing more discrimination. The average person that's involved in some of these programs, many of which I know, are not racist type folks.
Right.
It's hard for them to see what's actually happening, that what they're doing is not the true solution, right?
And they're to your point, Aaron, about reinventing words or changing words, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, all sound great,
right? But
they mean something entirely different by them.
No, that's well. There's another EO, and I had a very similar one on my list. This is my last one, which is ending. It's called ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based pay. Right? I mean that's what DEI ultimately falls down to. Is it is illegal discrimination, because it's saying because of your skin color, you can't get this role, right? And I thought Sean Duffy, who's the new transportation secretary, did a really great job of explaining why the dangers of DEI, right? Because this is more than just politics, right? More than just they want to put their people in place, we want to put our people in place. That's not what we're talking about. What DEI does is it prioritizes quotas over excellence.
Yeah.
Right.
Meritocracy.
And that's when you really start playing that out, who do you want flying your airplane? Right. Do you want the best person? Who do you want defending your country? Do you want the best person? I mean, this was you saw this with Pete Hegseth talking about this with some of the elite fighting forces, where they were actually saying, we're going to lower our standards to allow more women into this process, even though that means they're not going to be able to carry a man out, right? You saw this in the LA fires, where there was actually videos of female firefighters saying, well, yeah, it's true, I can't lift up a man to carry him out of a fire, but if he got himself caught in a fire in the first place, it's his fault. And it's like,
whoa,
that's deep.
That's literally the worldview of DEI right there. Now, is that the problem here that we need to make clear? That's not a moral statement against women saying you're not strong enough to be able to carry, because there's a lot of men, I'd say myself included, I would not make it as an Army Ranger, right? I'd venture to say nobody around this table.
You would definitely not make it as an
nobody
Army
around this table.
I think I might have the best shot.
No offense.
Anyway, we're going to arm wrestle anyway. But like that's not discriminatory. That's not condemning their moral value or anything like that. That's just a statement of fact. And this is what DEI does, is it undermines. The other thing I'll just say, two last things on this point. One, this is probably the best area right now where you see conservatives not being afraid of the media anymore. I read a story, and it's just so sweet right now because you see them playing the same hits and nobody caring what the left says. There's a Georgetown law professor said in the story that trying to defend DEI, she said, all DEI is about is understanding and acknowledging the nation's history. What? She says Americans have to get rid of the, quote, scarcity mindset that there's so little for everyone, adding that everyone benefits from DEI. Yeah. She says they use diversity, equity, and inclusion as this cover, and I believe it's a cover for discrimination, exclusion, and inequality. And if we don't pay attention to all these issues, all of these things, all these mechanisms of inequality will be reasserted. And that's just pure nonsense. right? I mean, but typically when a law professor would come out like this, or a reporter would put a microphone, you'd see a president or somebody run for the hills. No, we're not racist, as opposed to saying, I don't care what you call me. I mean, just yesterday, literally the streets around the State House were blocked off again because about 300 protesters were going down the streets. Now, number one, I get annoyed because of how much money we have to pay for the March for Life to actually get permits to close off the streets, and these jokers just come down and march and make things. They destroy things, and they don't pay a dime for their marches. But two, they came and did their march, and nobody cared. They're just yelling in the wind, and that's very sweet.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of you out there like me, spent your entire life working with disadvantaged kids, right? You got to look. There's a difference between outcomes and intentions, right? And a lot of times these intentions of a lot of these folks sound amazing. The ones that are working under them, definitely intentions are good. But look at the outcomes. We talked about education already here today. The Department of Education, which we already told you by their own standards, is failing. When you have only 30% of 4th and 8th graders can read proficiently, on $1 billion of investment to turn this thing around, and we're worse than we were 2 years ago? Right? So what is all that $1 billion of diversity, equity, inclusion? Here's how you know when you've got a fraud, right? If you've got a DEI organization that is supporting some kind of race bait initiative and they're not supporting school choice, it's a race baiter. It's a hustler, right? Because I'd rather a kid have an option, or a mother have an option to put that kid, take it out of a failing school system into something that's working and let that child thrive with a good education, then somebody say, well, everybody in my school is black. This is where I went when I was a kid, and we need $25,000 per head just to say, hey, at least we're diverse and included.
And by the way, if everybody in the school is black, just like if everyone in school is white, that's not very diverse.
But you know what? I wouldn't even care. Yeah. Right? Anyway, we'll go on that. Marriage and children. Listen, if that DEI organization that you support that says that they care about our kids, if they're not supporting marriage in the nuclear family, the right for every child to have their biological mother and father in the home, they're race baiters. They're hustlers, right? And if they are trampling on the graves of real civil rights activists by allowing the LGBTQIA mafia to co-opt their movement with gender ideology foolishness, I don't want to hear it. They are not for your people.
Amen. No, amen. Here's the real question. And David, do you have any other ones? That's all I had.
Yeah, I'm good.
My real question, just the last one on the DEI initiative, is the Ohio Chamber of Commerce going to hold their DEI summit again this year? Because they held it last September. I just want to know if the Ohio Chamber is going to be hosting their DEI summit, because I have a feeling they're going to be running for the hills. And maybe you should just join the Christian Business Partnership instead. But that's anyway. Sorry,
nice
just saying. They're still running out there talking DEI. Maybe you don't want to be a part of that.
Well, and the good news is, according to the NFL, we've ended racism because they're not putting it in the end zone at the Super Bowl
David,
anymore.
we did it. So. Hey, I'm going to shake your hand. We ended racism. That was the. It's no longer in the end zone at the Super Bowl.
They don't need to tell us to do it, so it must be over.
Great job.
We did it. Congratulations.
That was
guys.
the thing. I just say, all of those racists were watching the NFC Championship game, and they saw end racism in the NFL, and they said, you know what? All right.
It's
I'm
finally
done.
time.
I'm out. Yeah, good. We did it, guys.
We can have our buddy.
Finally. Listen, Martin, he was off. We didn't need Martin. It was all just the NFL putting choose love on the back of Aaron Rodgers' helmet.
Somebody pull the plug on this.
I would be happy to. I would be happy to, David. Well, great conversation, guys. Always great to have these with you. Hopefully it was informative and encouraging for our audience, and look forward to seeing you all back next week on The Narrative. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.